I didn't discover my partner's past all at once. It didn't come as a confession or a dramatic reveal. It leaked into my life in small, quiet ways. The kind you almost ignore because admitting them would mean admitting something else is wrong. The scariest part wasn't what I eventually learned. It was realizing how long I had been standing next to someone I didn't fully know. For years, I thought our life was boring in the best possible way. We had routines, coffee in the same mugs every morning, texts about groceries and traffic, inside jokes that didn't need explaining. When people asked how we were doing, I said, "Good." Solid. And I meant it. There were no red flags, no chaos, no obvious secrets. At least, none I knew how to see. Looking back, the first cracks were almost insulting in how small they were. He would dodge questions about certain years, not dramatically, just vaguely. Oh, that was a weird time. I don't really like talking about that phase. I was just figuring things out. Everyone has a past they don't love revisiting. I told myself that. Sometimes he reacted too strongly to things that seemed harmless. A news story, a casual comment about someone we knew. Once, a stranger mentioned a city he'd lived in before we met, and his entire body stiffened like he'd been caught doing something wrong. I noticed it, and then I decided not to. Trust is a strange thing. It doesn't feel like confidence. It feels like silence. The silence where questions could live, but don't. The first real clue came from something stupid. We were cleaning the apartment, music on, windows open. He was in the shower. His laptop chimed from the kitchen table. I wasn't snooping. I didn't even touch it at first. The notification preview flashed a name I didn't recognize and a message that read, "I didn't think you'd ever let this part of your life resurface." That was it. No context. No follow-up. When he came back, towel around his waist, I asked casually, "Who's that?" He barely glanced at the screen. Just someone from a long time ago. The way he said it ended the conversation before it began. I laughed it off. I hated how curious I suddenly felt. Curiosity implies suspicion, and suspicion felt like betrayal. So I swallowed it. But something shifted. I started noticing patterns. Stories he'd told me before didn't change completely, just enough to feel edited. Details missing. Timelines blurred. The emotional distance between events and explanations felt rehearsed. Sometimes I caught him watching me like he was calculating something. Not fear, not guilt. Assessment. I started to feel like I was living with someone who was always one step ahead of me, emotionally. And that's when the doubt turned inward. I wondered if I was the problem, if I needed more reassurance than was fair, if I was projecting old insecurities onto a person who had done nothing wrong. So I doubled down on trust until I couldn't anymore. One night, I woke up to him sitting on the edge of the bed, fully dressed, phone in his hand. The room was dark. He hadn't noticed I was awake. I asked, "What's wrong?" He jumped, actually jumped. "Nothing," he said too quickly. "Just couldn't sleep." He got back into bed, turned his back to me, and stayed perfectly still. No scrolling, no typing, just holding the phone like it was an anchor. That was the night I realized something was actively being kept from me. Digging didn't feel dramatic. It felt humiliating. I hated myself for it. I hated the quiet desperation that pushed me forward. But once the idea that there was something to find took root, I couldn't unsee the signs. I searched public records, old social media, archived posts, not obsessively, carefully, like I was afraid of breaking something fragile. What I found wasn't one big secret. It was layers, a different name he'd used before we met. Not legally changed, just abandoned. A relationship he'd never mentioned that had ended abruptly, a gap in employment that wasn't a gap at all, but something he'd chosen to erase. Then I found the article. It wasn't front-page news. It was years old, buried, but his face was unmistakable. Different haircut, different name, same eyes. The story wasn't simple enough to summarize cleanly. It involved choices, consequences, people hurt. A version of him that felt both foreign and disturbingly familiar. I didn't feel angry at first. I felt hollow, like someone had reached into my chest and scooped out a future I hadn't known I was carrying. When I confronted him, it wasn't explosive. It was quiet, almost respectful. He didn't deny it. He sighed, not in relief but in exhaustion. "I was going to tell you," he said. That sentence landed harder than anything else, because it meant he hadn't. Not yet. Not ever, apparently. He explained pieces of it. Carefully. Strategically. Some things he framed as growth, others as misunderstandings. He spoke like someone who had practiced this conversation alone many times. I asked why he didn't trust me with the truth. He said he was afraid of losing me. I wanted to scream that he already had, just not in the way he thought. After that, everything felt contaminated. Memories rewound themselves in my head, now wearing different colors. Conversations that once felt intimate now felt incomplete. Promises felt conditional. It wasn't just what he had done back then. It was the years he spent deciding I didn't deserve to know. Trust doesn't shatter loudly. It erodes, quietly, constantly. We tried to continue like normal. We ate dinner. We went to work. We talked about logistics. But intimacy doesn't survive withheld truth. Eventually, the relationship ended, not in a dramatic breakup, but in a slow acknowledgement that something essential had died. The affair wasn't ongoing. The past wasn't repeating itself, but it was still alive between us. Now, when I think about love, I think differently. I don't believe knowing someone means knowing everything. But I do believe choosing not to tell someone who shares your life is a kind of betrayal, even if your intentions are gentle. Some truths don't explode. They sink. And once they do, you spend the rest of your life standing on unfamiliar ground, wondering how much of what you felt was real, and how much was built on silence.